Paige is a current member of the Wildwood Community Affairs Committee, a 15-year property owner, both as a part-time and now a full-time owner, and has had 25 years working on numerous nonprofit boards. Paige provides representations for property owners with school-age children living in the community, which is a demographic that we have seen an increase. Rick Bradley is no stranger to the community, having served on the board for the last 3 years and on numerous community committees for many years, a little too numerous to mention. While our covenants do not specify term limits, the committee is aware that no previous board members have expressed an interest nor served concurrent terms. Those of you who have served on boards can certainly appreciate the reasons why. The committee carefully weighed the benefits of diversifying with new board members versus the continuity that a returning board member would provide. As we are involved with 2 significant events that we have not dealt with in the last 25 years, major construction work on the property owner's beach house and replacing the only COO that this community has ever had, the committee felt strongly that the community would be best served by the continuity that Rick offers. He has been intimately involved with the property owner's beach house project since the beginning, and you'll hear that when he gives his presentation, and has had extensive human resource experience, both relevant to the challenges of the next couple of years. The committee appreciates and thanks all the candidates who participated in the nominating process. We recognize how fortunate we are as a community to have so many qualified candidates willing to serve. I would also like to thank the committee members who served with me on this committee for their time and dedication to this process. I will now turn the meeting over to our secretary, Linda Tucker, who will explain the election process we will be using today. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And I'm going to say one more time, big round of applause for that nominating committee because they worked so hard this time. Do things a little bit differently and really come up with a good process to follow for the future. It's a little high for me, so move it down. My job here is to review the 2024 election procedures, and this is my swan song. Paige is hopefully one of the strong candidates for, she got my vote, I will tell you that, for the replacement position. They didn't want me to serve another time like Rick, so nominating committee went with someone younger and more beautiful. But anyway, kudos to the nominating committee for working hard on that. I will certify that with the proxies that we have received and also with the members present, we do have a quorum to conduct this election. We have the 2 openings that Debbie mentioned on the board of directors, 3-year terms. Their terms will expire at the annual meeting in March of 2027. So in addition to the 2 candidates that have been brought by the nominating committee, I'd like to ask, are there any nominations from the floor at this time? Going once. Okay, we will move on then to, I will move that we close the nomination process. Is there a second for that? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and we will move forward with the election. So I'm going to give you some instructions on your ballot. You each were given a yellow piece of paper that looks like this. And down at the bottom of this piece of paper, it tells you the number of votes that you have to cast. I'm going to pay particular attention to the ballot because if it is not filled out correctly, then it is a non-vote. So we want to make sure that you guys get the ballots filled out correctly so that your vote does count. So you will see that there's space there. Rick Bradley's name is there. Paige Huff's name is there. There are also additional spaces for other candidates. Look at the bottom, see how many votes you have to cast. Make sure you put your property address in here. Make sure you put your name here, and then make sure that you sign your ballot. Now, you have however many votes are on that sheet of paper. You may cast those votes equally among candidates that you wish, or you may cast all your votes for one candidate, or you may break them up and cast the majority of your votes for one and cast the remaining votes for others. So you have some flexibility here. There are two caveats. Do not exceed the number of votes that you can cast, and do not vote in fractions. Do either one of those things, and your vote is not a valid vote. So those are the instructions on cumulative voting, which many people do not know even that term, cumulative voting. Is something I had to learn as well. So at this time, if you've all marked your ballots or have sent in proxies for your ballot, we will have our Community Affairs Committee, along with some other folks, to collect the ballots, and then our auditors will count, and we will announce the results later in the meeting. And so Dave is wanting me to say something I didn't, it sounded like. Okay, so yes, if there's a motion from the floor later, you will still need these, so don't hand these in, only your yellow. I didn't get that pre-instruction, so. And I think next, while those ballots are being collected, next on our agenda is Debbie Stanley's going to come back up here as the treasurer and give a report on the money. She's going to tell you how much money we have. She's going to tell you how we're going to save it, how we're going to spend it. She's also going to tell you how we did spend it. So hopefully she's going to tell you that we do have some money, and that is my part. I'll be back later to announce the winners. Debbie?
Okay. A few minutes, everybody's finishing their ballots. I'll go ahead and. Okay, so the best way to start is the money coming in, the revenues. And Charlie last year introduced you to a lot of these numbers, so some will hopefully sound familiar, but you can look at it as we've roughly taken $6 million in 2023. And this gives you an idea of the breakdown of where those funds come from. And what I've presented to give you an idea too is 2022 versus 2023. So I'm going to focus a little bit on the differences, since Charlie went through in detail last year what we do spend, what we do have in terms of revenue. So you have your assessments. One of the changes last year we made was an increase in the commercial vehicle access fees, and you can see the impact to the revenues from that. So 450,000 versus 534 in 2023. Next is a very good story. The interest collect as a result of our transitioning from the CDs as they came due to the higher interest treasury, short-term treasury bills. We have a 10% increase in the interest that we received in revenues. The next area you see that there was a difference is on the opposite side of that, the real estate transfer fees. We are experiencing a reduction in those. The interesting thing is the number of sales are down fairly significantly. The value of the sales is increasing, which is kind of offsetting a little that reduction. And then we have the rental guest access fees. There was a slight increase as a result of an increase in the numbers of tracking and rental access fees we requested. So the total there being the 6 million. When you look at this 6 million is going to break down roughly almost in half, with half going to our operating expenses and the other half going into our reserves. So we will break that down, starting with the operating expenses. So again, I'm showing the difference between our 2022 numbers and our 2023. Majority of these stayed pretty standard with the slight increases we would expect with inflation. The two I wanted to highlight, the insurance costs. I'm sure all of you who have had to renew your insurance this year are familiar with this. Community is no different, and we are definitely feeling the insurance pressures. There's two parts of that besides just the pressures from the insurance business. We also are undertaking the property owner's beach house, which has a builder's risk insurance component, and we will also be increasing the value of the property owner's beach house, which will again increase our insurance costs. The other area that you'll see a difference is safety and security, and there were efforts by Dave and staff and the Safety and Security Committee to attract and retain qualified staff, and that results in some additional costs in order to be able to do that. So you can see that roughly half of those revenues went into the operating expenses. So the next area, which is probably the more interesting area over the next 2 years, are the reserve funds. And if you remember, you can kind of think of the reserve funds as kind of our savings funds, and the board and the planning committee look at these and have set out what we think are the required needs based on the useful life of key components, how much money we'll need, and at what point in time we will need it in order to have the money available to do the things that we need to keep the community in the shape that it's in. 4 key areas: capital improvements, roads and drainage, disaster recovery, and beach maintenance. One of the things that we did look at for this year and made a change is originally our beach maintenance target was 6 million. And based on a lot of the activities that are going on and the rising costs, it is clear that that amount would not be sufficient. We did not believe it would be sufficient. So that target has been raised to 10 million. That's the only target change that was made this year. Now, if you look, that means we are now 76% funded in that fund versus where we would have been over that 100% if we had kept the target. Now, if you look out to the percentage funded, it looks pretty good. But we recognize that we are going from the pure savings phase to the spending phase in 2024. So I'm going to highlight what's going to go on over this next year just so you can sort of see what's going to happen. And the 2 key areas that I'm going to do that are capital improvements and roads and drainage. So when you look at capital improvement, throughout 24, we will still be getting funds that will be going into our capital improvement fund. Just to give you an idea, those funds typically come from real estate transfer fees. So if you remember, 50% of our real estate transfer fees must go to the beach fund. The other 50% are allocated on a yearly basis depending upon the needs of the funds. The other thing that is allocated across these funds is that interest income. And we do have an equity transfer that the board will do at the end of the year. If there are some excess funds in operating, they will be allocated into some of these funds. So that is kind of the money that comes in. And when you look at the next slide, so you get 2022 and 23, we have our usual typical amount of expenditures coming out of this fund. 2024, you see our big jump up. And in fact, some of the 2023 funding is also part of the capital improvement of the property owner's beach house. So that fund, which is currently 113% funded, by the end of 2024, it will drop down to the 44% fund. That is as planned, sort of like those of you who have your 529 savings for your college kids. Once they start going to college, that money's going out of that fund and the fund's going down. So that is what is expected and what is planned for the capital improvements fund. And Rick will be going into detail to show where that money's being spent on. The other significant one for 2024 is roads and drainage. So again, we have our funding going in allocated over the last 2 years, and I have included on both slides the 2024, that is what we budgeted. Keeping in mind that real estate transfer fees and interests are variable, but we do need to have a budgeted number that we work with. Coming out of this fund, we have some routine annual type road maintenance, lagoons, drainage. But again, in 2024, we have a major capital project that we will be doing on the roads all along the Back Bay area. And Dave will be going into detail on how those funds were going to be spent. So you're looking at it again across the 2022, 2023, and 2024. We'll go from that over 90% funded in this fund in our spending stage and drop down to 50%. And then starting in 2025, we'll get back into our building these funds up for the next major projects. Keep in mind that the same cycle will probably we expect to happen in the beach maintenance fund sometime possibly in the next 3 years, where that fund will start to be used. So the process that we're using is good, and you end up with a bottom line that is really quite good news. Our operating finances are good, in good shape. Our revenues are keeping pace with our expenditures. And the reserve finances are well positioned to meet our capital expenditures, which we anticipate in the coming years. Thank you. Turning back over to Jim.
Thanks, Debbie. Pretty good shape, always good to hear. All right. Good morning again, thanks for attending. Frankly, a lot more people here than I thought there would be given the weather. As I thought about what I wanted to cover this morning, and to really be disciplined in the number of subjects I could address, let's just turn into something like one of our marathon board meetings, and nobody here wants or needs that. So I'm going to restrict myself to essentially 3 topics in my remarks. First, I'm going to review the strategic plan, give a high-level overview of what it is I think we accomplished and where we're going on some of those. I'm going to discuss at length relationship between Wild Dunes Resort and the Community Association, give you an update on the things we've done and where we're going on that. And then, most importantly, looking in the future, we've talked about today, Dave's the only chief operating officer we've ever had here, 1998. This is his last annual meeting, although he's got 10 more months of work to do. So I want to recognize him and thank you for everything you've done. You've really made this place fun. And for everyone here, hopefully in the 4th quarter, we'll have an event for Dave, honoring Dave, and hopefully that'll be at the new property owner's beach house. More on that to follow. I also want to convey my thanks and appreciation to the staff of the Community Association, Carolyn, Jacob, Fran, Stephanie. Fran's leaving us, by the way, to go be nearer to her grandchildren, so we're sorry about that, but they're great. You work with them all the time. They're so helpful and do so much for our community. I also want to recognize Larry Pipes, who heads Allied Universal Security. He does a great job. He is always and also I want to recognize this board. I've been on many associations and club boards since the early 80s. Shocking. And can unequivocally state that this group of folks is the most productive, organized, and hardest working group of volunteers I've ever been associated with in this type of role. I think we should be real happy that we have these people working for us. So thanks you. And finally, before I get into my remarks, I want to again thank all the standing committees and all the volunteers in the audience and throughout the community. It really makes this place a wonderful place to live. All right, so here I go. As you may recall from Debbie Stanley's address last year, we completely revised the long-range planning document. It used to be sort of a meandering history, but Debbie and the team that I recognized earlier turned it into a living, working document. You can find it on the website. That's what it looks like. It's 17 pages, and it is dense, but it has been very effective. It's a great guidepost for us to work on projects, short-term, medium-term, long-term, for the benefit of the community. I'm very happy with it. And so there are 6 areas of focus. And what we do is we took that 17-page plan, we threw it in a spreadsheet so it's actually workable. This is just an example of the spreadsheet. This is a fraction of the strategic plan. But you can sort of see, I'm not going to go through every item. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. This is the working document that we use on our daily, weekly goals and objectives. So let me talk through some of the 6. Environment, obviously a lot of beach work and planning. We all see what's going on in Beachwood East. Working with the city to address some of our issues there. I want to give a shout out to the city and thank them for allocating up to $300,000 for sand scraping and sandbags along that stretch. Later in today's program, we're going to have Stephen Trainham with Coastal Sciences and Engineering address the whole beach situation. But it's obviously foremost of all our minds. Financial sustainability. Debbie's already covered our reserve plans and what's in store for them this year. We did work with the resort to increase their contribution to the Beach Renourishment Fund as we decided to go from $6 to $10 million. And that was frankly an easy ask, and Terry Hacks stood up and got it done. So we thanked him for that. Community operations and facilities, obviously the property owner's beach house is ongoing, and Rick's going to give you an update on that. One thing we've talked about for years is access points and porousness of our community. And so this year, most of you are aware, we put the gate in 41st Street, that little golf cart path. We analyzed that for pretty much a couple seasons, had cameras out there. There were weekends when we get 70, 80 people coming through on golf carts, bikes, even SUVs. We could see occasional truck drive up that cart path into our property. That didn't work. So anyway, we put the barn gate in. We're following it now. Admittedly, there are still some porous parts. I mean, people sort of scoot through those parking lots to the right, the Yacht Harbor and Marina parking lots, but it's a lot better than it was, and we're continuing to we're conscious of it, and we think it's worked out pretty well. Haven't got too much kickback from members. People understand where we're coming from on that. One of the big things is engaging with the community. As everybody remembers, last year was the year of the short-term rental conversation, and that was a big focus island-wide, and we obviously were asked a lot about it in our position as a community association. We did a survey of all 2,100 members of our community and got some valuable feedback, which we shared with City Council and others that were interested. As you could guess, we have 3 different types of owners constituencies here. We have permanent residents, we have second homeowners and investors, and they all had different views on the way that should be, and they sort of fell out the way you would think their positions would be. But the 40-odd pages of comments had every solution in the book, so we were happy about that. And more on that in a few minutes. And as most of you are aware, we're trying to do a better job of integrating Wild Dunes with the Isle of Palms. We're all on the same island, and I don't know if you saw a couple weekends ago, we had the Wild Child Triathlon. We helped sponsor this in February and judge with the law enforcement and neighborhood services, Lens, the resort, and others in the community. I don't know if you saw, but there were 90 kids out here, chilly Sunday morning, and it was a blast. We were showing the pictures up before, smiles everywhere. As much as anything, I enjoyed seeing people in our community, parents and children, running and training for it for a couple of weeks. You could tell they were out there, kids zipping ahead and parents lugging behind. It was wonderful. It was a great team effort, and I want to thank you to our new board nominee, Paige Huff. She was the lead organizer from our side, and wouldn't have happened without her. We want to also improve relationships. That's the goal. Two things I think we did effectively in 2023. Worked a lot in communication with our stakeholders. Carolyn's weekly update is opened by over 75% of everybody that's on the list. That's pretty good. And it received higher marks in that recent survey we sent out, spot survey. The community volunteers, the second thing we did was we had an HOA meeting, August or September, I think, where we had 28 regimes in this community. A lot of people don't know that. And we reached out to them, and we all had a meeting over in the boardwalk then, and met for 3 hours and discussed a host of issues. And I think the feedback we got was, we need to do this more often. Ways to reach out, work with HOAs, and you're going to see that a couple times a year. That was a winner, and it gave us direction as a board on issues, gave us feedback on issues, gave us lots of ideas. I thought that was a very important thing. Additionally, after many requests, we've opened the board meetings to anybody. You've always been able to come for the first 30 minutes and chat, but now we used to ask people to leave. Now you're welcome to stay and watch the sausage being made as long as you want. In the first 3 months, we had a few people stay, and now it's down to like 1 or 2. But I think that's good. And you may not realize that we recently decided to post drafts of our minutes. It used to be the minutes would only be posted after the next board meeting when they got approved. Now we're trying to get a draft up, post it, so you can sort of see within a week or so when we'll get around to putting on what we did. So if you have something, you can reach out and let us know. We thought that was good. We also see residential quality of life. There's increased focus on this area with the STR referendum showing up. I think both the city and the community association recognize that an underlying concern behind the whole effort was livability, for lack of a better term. They heard that loud and clear, and we did too, in that survey we talked about. So how do we address that? Well, we recognize that our standard operating procedures, SOPs, which essentially are rules that we hear, needed a comprehensive rework. And with consideration of more consistent enforcement, how do you enforce them and what are we going to do? So to that end, our Safety and Security Committee, Linda Tucker, assisted by Les, and is comprised of many, many very able volunteers, worked on that and suggested enforcement procedures for violations. These were approved at the last board meeting. I think you're going to find that makes us better equipped to handle some of the livability challenges. And that's something we're focused on all the time. For instance, we've also worked with the resort on improving the general conditions along the border of the core of the resort and livability areas. As Dave's going to be talking about later, we're going to be repaving most of the roads in the community this year. And we recognize that Backport, Racket Club Villa, needed work. It was a little overcrowded, and so we had a survey. We thought it was a little bit dangerous, had some bad parking. So we reached out to Racket Club Villa HOA and the resort and community association, and we took the survey and we walked and we looked at each and every individual parking space. And I think we're going to make it safer, better, and also just so you know, parking for residents mostly and residents guests. And occasionally see some contractors in there, but it used to be employees park there, but now Tom, the resort, said no employees, you don't park there. We have one person that has special needs and needs to get to their job, they park there, but the rest of no employee parking along that. So that's, I think, a positive for the area. That's the type of approach we're trying to take. One last thing before I get into the next topic. Parking remains a challenge, and we've been working with the resort on addressing it. You saw the communication from Tom Nolan, the resort, about what they're doing. You're likely aware that club members get free valet parking. If you don't, now you know. And the valet service one thing it does is reduces the number of cars cruising around looking for parking spaces, which we think is a real positive. Here's a little fact nobody knew. The wide increase in the number of golf carts and LSVs in our midst, this blew me away. In 2015, we had about 500 golf cart permits. Now we have over 900. That's a big growth. And plus, LSVs look like golf carts, but they're really vehicles with license plates. They have grown dramatically, a couple hundred of those now, because you can't drive golf carts at night. If you drive LSVs at night, so people who want to be out after sunset are migrating to LSVs. So we have a trend in this community towards golf carts and LSVs. So as such, the resort's done a good job. They've increased the number of golf cart parking around the core, around the tennis center, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to have some golf cart parking along back court where cars should be, you can pull a golf cart in. We recognize that that's a trend. We think people are going to be using the golf carts live in the community to get around. We see that more and more, so they're trying to do it. They also, the resort also reclaimed a bunch of parking where that cow was, that cellular tower, and we lined up a bunch of member parking along the lap pool. We recognize it's sort of a drop in the bucket, but it's an improvement. Every little bit helps. Oh, and for those of the audience who are not aware, we do not allow rental golf carts in this. Yes, there are rental LSVs, that is capped at 62. Secondly, I want to discuss the community active partnership between the resort and the Wilderness Community Association. As you recall, last year, running Terry Act as a Class C member was pretty controversial and caused some bruised feelings. We made the case that, in our opinion, Class C member needed a seat at the table. And I will say without any hesitation that having Terry Act in that position has been a tremendous help. There are any number of instances where she's committed capital and helped resolve issues in a timely fashion. She's been great, and I'm so glad that she's on our board. And here's the controversial one. I'm going to address annual assessments here and let you know where we stand on that. First of all, not until I got on the board did I realize how everything we do on this board is ruled by our governing documents, the covenants and associated bylaws. That's our Bible that allows us to do what we do and tells us what we can't do. And we check with Lydia and Lenny all the time about what we can do. In 2020, when we changed that, we changed the voting path. They're hard to change. We moved it from 75 to 2/3. It's still a super majority to change covenants, but that happened in 2020. In 2020, I was sitting in the audience like you guys before I got involved with this, and when we capped the resort's voting percentage at 20. Now, listen is very small, and his team recounted the rigorous process to get to that point. As a point of interest, had that not passed, the resort's voting percentage would now be 29%. So they capped at 20, that would have been 29, and that is all based on the square footage of developed roof space. That's the algorithm. Someone suggested that the resort's voting percentage equal their assessment. I remember that conversation, and I sort of sat there and nodded, so it seems to make sense, one vote. And sitting in and Dan Batista was the low resort representative at the time, and he said, we'll look at that. Well, 2 weeks later, COVID hit. We were in our homes for 18 months, and nothing ever happened. So, where do we stand? First of all, let me assure everyone that the resort is paying exactly what the covenants require them to pay. For this year, that's over $217,000. And last year, it was $209,000. I will say as an aside, most of us are Class A members here. Our assessment went up 4%. That was $35 this year. Resort's assessment increased the same 4%, but that was over $8,300. That's real money. So when we sat down to talk about this last year, we said, look, let's go do some due diligence, do our homework. And here's what we found and how we're looking at it. We dug into other southeastern residential communities like ours did their assessments. And as you might guess, they vary greatly. Most have very different commercial residential configurations. But Kiowa is often referenced as a good proxy. After all, the initial covenants are virtually identical, same developer and all that. We have seen the numbers, and we have to respect the Kiowa's confidentiality. We said that we would not share them, but I'm going to give you my conclusions, having seen the numbers. By the way, Kiowa developed residential, that's akin to our Class A assessment, is almost $2,900. Ours is $900. And interestingly enough, they charge extra assessment if you're behind a gated community inside Kiowa. We don't do that, obviously. It's the same assessment for all members. Kiowa did amend their covenants in 1988 to change the voting denominator, which is sort of too much inside baseball and nuance I won't get into. But here's the bottom line. If you look at all the numbers and the budgets, their resort's contribution is virtually identical to ours. That's the important thing. Nominally, the developer's amount is virtually identical, not only on the budget, but the developer's contribution is virtually identical to ours. Their operating budget is much larger than ours. That comes as no surprise. It's a bigger island. They got more roads. They got a lot more landscaping, infrastructure. Makes sense. What I found interesting is how they accounted for it. Most of their budget comes from the 5 resort golf courses. That's, we don't have that luxury, and I just found that interesting. So we continue to have discussions with the resort about what makes sense. Budgeting, operations. Oops. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good one. I forgot to bring this up. This is the history of assessments from day one, all the way down. And you can sort of see where we came from 1977 up to now. And that's how we got to 900. We only have 20 some lots left, not too many of those. And the resort, you can see, the village added a bunch, but really the Sweetgrass Inn doubled it. And now just inflation has gotten us to 217. That's the history of the assessments, for those of you who are interested. So anyway, as I said, we continue to have discussions with the resort. And maybe there's some way to amend the covenants, but we're not there yet. But we're continuing to have that discussion. I'm sure this discussion will not please everyone in our audience, but that's a state of play on that subject. Finally, I want to end my too long remarks with an update on the search for Dave's replacement as Chief Operating Officer. A lot of work has already been done. We've interviewed several search firms which specialize in community associations and have selected Management Matters LLC to help us identify possible replacements, including what I expect will be excellent internal candidates. They have extensive experience in the Southeast, including current engagements with Seabrook on strategic planning and Litchfield by the Sea to search for a new head. I expect the timeline to be something along the lines of hitting the market sometime in June, advertising the position, interviewing the initial slate of candidates by Zoom, and narrowing the slate to 3 for in-person interviews. We'll be using the board as a search committee, with the planning personnel committee doing most of the legwork before the interviews begin. So that's more than enough for me. Thank you for listening. And now I'm going to introduce Dave Kanowski for the office report.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to have to speed this up. I can see that. It's okay. Welcome, everyone. You know you're getting older when you print your annual meeting speech out in 22 font and use reading glasses as well. So, anyway, bear with me. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank the resort and Hyatt staff, Tom Nolan, for providing this venue for our meeting this morning, and of course my staff for all their hard work and preparation for the meeting. Larry Pipes, thank you. Larry does a great job handling our security, and he just got back from opening the rear boxes behind the links clubhouse and on Back Bay Drive, so hopefully by the end of the day, we'll see some normalcy to the water levels. I would like to thank Desiree Fergoso, Chief Cornett, Chief Oliverius, and Donnie Pitts for their assistance and support in 2023. And on this, the 47th birthday of WDCA and my 27th annual meeting appearance, I thought it would be interesting to briefly look back on some of the accomplishments that we have completed over the last few years. Please save your groans for the Q&A section here. Back in 1998, the annual assessment was $302 for a lot and $604 for a dwelling. Fast forward to 2024, where our owners paid $450 and $900 respectively. $900, of course, being for a developed property. If my math is correct, that's an increase of 50% over 27 years, or less than 2% per year, which I believe is right in line with inflationary trends, of course, up until the last few years. Not bad. It was 1999 when the first reserve study was undertaken in Wild Dunes. We had an engineer come in and kick all the tires here, identify all of our assets. And it was determined that we were seriously underfunded for pretty much doing anything in the future. And the study didn't even address the needs on the beach, which of course is one of our major assets. So after an exhaustive review of the revenue enhancement options in 2001, the board passed an amendment to the covenants to collect 1/2 of 1% of the sales price of any property sold in Wild Dunes from the purchaser of that property. This fee was lovingly called the contribution to reserves fee, and is also known today as the real estate transfer fee. And as they say, the rest is history. If you look at our fund balances back in 1997, you can see we had $583,000 in the bank. And as of December 31st, 2023, it's now $20 million. And of course, all of that includes the projects that have been completed over the years, various cash inflows and outflows. This slide shows the real estate transfer fees collected, essentially broken down into 5-year periods. You can see we had some good years between 2002 and 2006. 2007 to 2011 were a little slow. And then, of course, things picked back up again, and the fee was increased to 1% on July 19th of 2018 via the changes to the covenants. You can also see that in the period 2017 to 2021, over $3 million flowed into the beach maintenance reserve, and then subsequently the 1/2 of 1% in 2022 and 2023. So the collection of real estate transfer fees here has been very beneficial to the community. So has the board and the COO, I am leaving at the end of this year, have we been secretly stashing this money away for a future soiree in the Grand Cayman Islands? I've been reading some stuff online, and there's some people that like to go to the Grand Caymans. And I'd have to say, of course we have done that. I mean, I want to retire, right? I'm just kidding, obviously. We put money back into this community. We put the dollars back in towards keeping this community the premier residential and resort community that it is. I call that equity. I don't know if that's proper, but that's what I call it. In 1999, we began work on improving the drainage system. Additional drainage pipes were added at key locations. And with this kind of work, you can imagine there are always challenges. It's a lot of fun putting a shovel in the ground here, or having a piece of equipment put there, walking into the ground. You never know what you're going to run into. Here's a project where we added a 36-inch culvert along Back Bay Drive down by the Ocean Point villas, Ocean Point homes, I should say. to improve the flow out of the lower end of the community. And things were going real well. The contractor had to dodge under an 8-inch water main, and they did a great job, and I was happy. The project was coming to an end. Oops, the water main settled and burst. And so we had to go back to the start and do it again. So those are the kinds of things that have happened over the years. You know, we have improved the drainage system. I think it's critical when you have days like today. You've got to move water out of the community. You've got to do it the best way that you can, and that is through conveyance. Switching gears a little bit here, in 1999 and 2000, a timber bulkhead was constructed along the south side of Palmetto Drive. That's across from the tennis courts, and there was some tremendous settlement of the bike path and the roadway, Palmetto Drive, across from the tennis courts. And so something had to be done to stabilize that whole area, where we would have had some problems with the road surface there. We also had continual flooding of Fairway Oaks Lane, Dunecrest Lane, Beechwood East, and we put in new drainage systems for those neighborhoods in 2002. And then, with that completed, road repaving began in earnest in 2002 and 2003. We completed Palmetto Drive and most of the side roads. Back then, asphalt was relatively inexpensive, and I can remember our engineer specifying anywhere from 6 inches to 12 inches of asphalt buildup along Palmetto Drive from Fairway Oaks Lane down to Ocean Point Drive. I kind of scratched my head. I said, do we really need to do this? Well, the roadway was very rutted, and it was very flooded after 2-inch and 3-inch rain events. So we decided to spend the extra money and build the road up. So in some places you have Palmetto Drive, you have 12 inches of asphalt thickness on that end of the community. We also completed the Lagoon Road fishing dock in 2004, and we undergrounded the SCE&G power lines along many sections of the community. That project was about a $2 million project, and we worked closely with SCE&G to develop a more reliable system, but also the aesthetic benefits are really priceless when you look around. Fast forward to 2006, not there yet. The property owner's beach house was in need of some exterior repairs, and we surveyed the membership. We expanded the exterior open deck. We replaced the handicap ramp, replaced the exterior railings and columns, constructed a picnic shelter, observation deck, and new walkway to the beach. And we also added picnic tables and benches. I can't wait to see the finished product in 2024 of the new beach house. Here's a picture of the picnic shelter, which gets a lot of use during the summer, spring and summer and fall months. And there's a picture of the completed facility in 2006. I'm also particularly proud of our accomplishments relating to beach preservation here at Wild Dunes, a favorite subject of Jimmy Bernstein. Thank you, Jimmy. I am unquestionably, the beach is our most important asset and attraction. And back in 2006, the ocean waters were lapping against the front beach condos all the way from Summer House to Ocean Club. And the board, really for the first time in the community's history, accepted the challenge to devise a plan for preserving and maintaining the beach, an important first step. After all, what is the value of a beach community like Wild Dunes that has no beach and is constantly undergoing problems? Coastal Science and Engineering was hired to plan the first large-scale renourishment project, and we pumped 870,000 cubic yards in 2008, which restored a dry sand beach along most of the shoreline. The project was a collaborative effort between the city of Isle of Palms, WDCA, Low Wild Dunes, Front Beach condo owners. Charleston County kicked in some money, and also the state of South Carolina. Here's a before picture in 2007, which shows the condition of the beach. You can see the shoal attachment coming ashore in the middle of the community, which caused the focused erosion leading up to the event. And you can, if you look clearly, you can also see a bunch of sandbags piled up in front of the condo areas. And this is what the beach looked like after the nourishment project of 870,000 cubic yards. So is that the end of the beach story? Not hardly. Several years later, there was a need for shoal management to move sand into eroding areas. 80,000 cubic yards of sand were relocated to the eastern end of the beach in 2012. More was transported in 2014 as there was more focused erosion. And then, of course, in 2018, we had a massive 1.7 million cubic yard project with another offshore project. And as we enter into another shoal bypassing event, starting now, and 2025, deja vu is here again. And fortunately, we have the increase in real estate transfer fee from 0.5% to 1%, which occurred in 2018. And we're putting that 0.5% to 1% directly into the beach maintenance fund, which is at $7.6 million, as Debbie pointed out. Other noteworthy capital improvements in the last 2 decades: automatic security gates at community entrances, sidewalks from Morgan's Cove to Sundial Circle, and on Racket Club, Lagoon Road and Morgan Place Drive, new welcome side street signs, street lights. Where's the exit off of Morgan Cove Drive? The complete repair and restoration of the Morgan Creek Waterway Island Bridge. That was fun. I think I'm gonna have to pull a Rubio here. Jim, hold on. I am running for president. Where was I? So what's planned for 2024? Okay, so we have major road resurfacing. Here's the list. And if you don't see your road on the list, it's too late. Because we're already into the engineering on this. We're gonna repair curbs, concrete curbs. We're gonna level depressions. We're gonna put down new pavement. I've always found that milling and resurfacing roads and building up roads on a barrier island is much more effective than removing old asphalt and milling everything out and putting new surface down. I'm also going to go on record here saying I'm not a real big fan of slurry mixes that I've seen done in other places. They don't seem to hold up, and you don't really get the longevity that a new resurfacing gives you. Secondly, a major project in 2024, we have a drainage pipe replacement project needed on the eastern end of the community. It's going to impact Fairway Dunes and Pelican Bay 61 through 74. We deferred the project until this fall. It was scheduled for last fall. I asked our engineers to try to find a less invasive way to continue to convey water through that important section of our drainage system. The original plan called for a new pipe in really close proximity to their swimming pool and tennis courts, and it was problematic. So we've re-engineered the plan, and we hope to get it completed this fall. Looking forward, what does the reserve plan identify as major projects? I'm almost done, Jim. Well, you can see we have bulkheads to replace on Seagrass Lane. We have more lagoon dredging. We have the maintenance of the beach, shoal management and beach renourishment. The front security gate is almost 30 years old. It's in need of replacement. There's, I think, some positive things that can be done to improve the welcome at the front gate and also improve the traffic flow. That will be someone else's job. The Lagoon Road fishing dock will probably need a little bit of work. I don't think the whole thing will have to be replaced. And then we have more road repaving in 2034. And eventually the Morgan Creek Island Bridge will have to be replaced. We bought another 25 years with the major repairs that we did for a cost of $450,000. in 2018. But like any other bridge, at some point, it's going to need to be rebuilt. So that'll be a major project down the road. As Terry said in her, I think it was her 2010 or 2011 speech, this is hard. Anyway, in closing, I would like to thank you all, and you guys too, for giving me the opportunity to leave Wall Dunes. This is hard, Terry, in a better condition than what I found. But most importantly, for the opportunity to serve you over all of these years. I will always treasure Wall Dunes. Next up is Stephen Traven. Stephen is the president of Coastal Science and Engineering, and he's going to give us an update on beach conditions.
Dave, I've known you a long time, and to make me follow that, thanks for having me. I'm Stephen Traven with Coastal Science and Engineering. Before I even start, I would just like to reiterate what's been said before about Dave. He was, I think, probably the first client I met as part of CSE in 2007, coming to Wild Dunes and taking some pictures of these 13,000 sandbags that he just showed a picture of was my first task before I actually got to go out and build. So Dave kind of saw me grow my wings as CSE. Our company actually has a longer history with him, dating back to 1982. Down at Seabrook Island, where we did some big projects down there. So he's been great to work with, and I'm going to miss it significantly. So, I will try to keep this as short as possible. There's been a lot going on the beach, and not just the beaches at Wild Dunes or All Palms, but up and down the state. We've seen a lot of storm events over the past 10 years. We've seen just a lot of changes and things that we're going to get into. And I've given a similar talk here before, but I know there's a lot of new residents and new owners, so I'll do a little bit of history. The Isle of Palms is an inlet-dominated island. Your sand supply comes from Dewey's Inlet. Shoals come on shore, and that's great. They bring you a lot of sand, but they also bring a lot of problems as they're coming on shore. They can cause some temporary periods of erosion, some temporary periods of accretion, and that can move up and down the coast. And while we know what the process is doing, we can't predict exactly where it's going to attach, when it's going to attach, how much sand it's going to bring, and what that's going to look like on the beach. So we try to plan ahead as much as we can. And what we've learned since 2007, I'll brag on both the communities a little bit between Wild Dunes and the city of Isle of Palms, is they've learned that you've got to be proactive in planning, you've got to be proactive in building funding. And the way that the city and the community has dedicated efforts to have long-term funding for their beach really is a model. And we've used the city of Isle of Palms and Wild Dunes as an example to a lot of other communities that are struggling to figure out how to pay for projects and how to maintain their beach in the long term. They look at a $15 or $20 million project that they may have to do every 20 years and just 10 years, and it just kind of blows their mind that it's too big of a task for them to want to tackle. But they're going to have to at some point. And the way that the city of Wild Dunes has kind of taken on that responsibility, saying we're not looking for the Corps to come in and fix us. We're not, we take the state help from the state, but if they're not there, we're going to take responsibility for our beach. Is really the model that a lot of our communities think to do. So again, really, shoals are the critical driver for the Wild Dunes beach condition. They add sand to the beach, but we get this characteristic erosion on either side of the shoals that they're attaching. And they attach every 6 to 8 years or so. That can vary, the size can vary, the location of attachment can vary. But it's a process that's well known. So ultimately it adds sand, but what we've seen over the past 15 years is really that the sand that's being naturally added isn't sufficient to account for all the sand that's leaving the system. So we do have a pretty significant loss of erosion, loss of sand that we've seen in the past several years. So we've had to supplement that with renourishment projects. This figure just shows how these shoals migrate onto the beach. You can see the colors over a period of about 5 years. The shoal went from about 2,000 feet offshore and works its way onshore. It eventually emerges. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but we provide annual monitoring reports to the city that's on their website. But if you're interested in the details of this process, how the beach volume is changing across the island, you can access those reports. Just a little history. The top photo shows the area just south of Wild Dunes, 53rd Avenue is there on the kind of center east side. And the beach hasn't always been healthy in that area. There are actually groins exposed in that area. There's a seawall. And now that area is buried behind several hundred feet of dune fields. And all that sand has migrated out on dunes and down to the front part of the center part of the homes. On those bottom photos, you can see a very large shoal event attached to the eastern end of Wild Dunes. Created basically a new barrier island seaward of the old shoreline, had a lagoon between the old shoreline and that shoal. And it took about 20 years for that process to fully merge onto the beach and spread out. So again, these can be very significant events. So the first project, there's been really a history of a project, but dating back to 1983, sand was dredged out of the marina and pumped onto the Wild Dunes area. There have been periodic shoal kind of scraping events where they're taking sand off the shoal and moving it into eroded areas. As they mentioned, the first big project was in 2008. It was about a $10 million project. I'll skip through that, and then the last one was 2018. And had about twice as much sand. But there's been some kind of consistent patterns. Our erosional hotspots that kind of are the areas that always poke up are the areas around Beechwood East and Dunecrest Lane, and then the area around Ocean Club and Seascape in the 18th hole. Those are the areas that tend to be most effective during these shoal bypass events, and that holds true. They're the areas in which the shoal attaches, the sand spreads to. So they're the ones that really drive the triggers on when you implement a project. And what we're trying to do is have as many tools in our toolbox as we can to manage the sand supply along Wild Dunes. And that goes from very short-term measures like sandbags or sand scrapings for very localized erosion issues, to interim projects, which are these shoal management projects where we may move anywhere from 50 to 200,000 yards of sand. And then when needed, we do the very large-scale projects to really significantly add sand to the system. And again, sometimes it's not necessarily the total quantity of sand that's on this beach, it's where that sand is at. You have areas that are very healthy, and then a couple thousand feet down the beach, you have areas that are very eroded. That makes it very complicated to try to manage as you move forward. Kind of skip through this, you can see the plan for the last project in the bar areas offshore. I will jump ahead to say that we are in the beginning of the permitting process for the next large-scale project. And part of that effort is, we learned in this last one that there was this very significant resource offshore where there was a blockade during the Civil War. The Union Army sunk several whaling vessels filled with rock to try to blockade Charleston Harbor. They were able to find several of those vessels, but they're still missing a couple. So as we're searching for sand offshore, some of the greatest sand deposits are right in this area where these shipwrecks are. So we're having to work with shipbuilders to try to make sure we're not impacting this cultural resource. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're working with them, hoping to start the field work in the next couple of weeks there. But once we have that data, we'll submit a permit application. We'll go through the review process. And once you have that permit, it's good for 5 years. So we'll have kind of a window to be able to implement a project when the time's needed. Again, a photo of the 2018 project. Again, it was about twice the volume of sand, and I'll speak to how that's performed. But in some areas, it added up to 600 feet of beach. It was a pretty good height to get out to the water in some areas. But we knew based off the last project, we needed to have that buffer to try to contain sand during these shoal events. If you go back to the 2008 project, about 4 years later, we were already experiencing some severe erosion around the Ocean Club area. About 2014, 6 years later, we were having some very significant erosion around Beechwood East and some other areas. So this shoreline can change very dynamically. So adding more sand was able to buy us more time with this last project. Monitoring areas will focus on reaches 5 and 6 and 7. That was the Wild Dunes area. If if you're looking for details on the rest of the island, you can go to some of the monitoring reports, I can answer questions. But the big point is, the beach has been highly erosional since 2018. This project has eroded close to twice as fast as the last project, and I'll speak to why we think that's going on. If you look at that bottom left image, you can see that orange line is the erosion after the 2008 project. The yellow line is the erosion after this last project. It's a much steeper drop, meaning the sands are eroding faster. Overall, about 1.4 million yards have been lost since 2018. That number is a little deceptive because that does include losses in areas that weren't nourished as much, so it's some background erosion. I'll say the beach is in a little bit better condition overall than that number would suggest, but it is a significant loss. The positive note is the erosion is slowing in Wild Dunes. Now we're seeing a lot of erosion in other ends of the island in the past 2 years. But within Wild Dunes, this last year was actually one of the lowest amount of erosion cumulatively within Wild Dunes as we've had since 2018. I don't know that makes everybody feel warm and fuzzy, but it is slowing down. Reach 7 along the Dewey's Inlet shoreline has actually been sand pretty continuously since really the 2008 project, but especially since 2018. I ain't showing a lot of graphs, but this data just shows where the shoreline position has changed. So if you kind of compare the blue line, which was right after the project, to the black line is where we are today, where they're furthest apart is where the beach has changed the most. And really, we've seen that in the Beachwood East area, extending over to about the Ocean Club, the Beach Club area. Ocean Club had been doing, or that very eastern end of the common area, had been doing really well until this past year we saw erosion kind of in that area. And again, that's due to these shoals. What we're looking for in the future, I'll get to it in a second, so I'll stay on here. Everywhere in South Carolina has been hammered the past 10 years. We've had a ton of storm events. We've had 7 FEMA disasters, declared disasters in the past 10 years, as opposed to 3 the previous 15 years before that, and all this occurred in 2004. So we've had a lot higher storm intensity, which up and down the coast, we've seen a lot of erosion, even in areas that have been historically stable. Areas like the Grand Strand have been pretty stable, and calling saying, hey, beaches are really like we've never seen. And part of that may be due to sea level rise as well. Just very kind of basic sea level rise, looking at the past 15 years, we've seen about half a foot of sea level rise that we've been able to measure in Charleston Harbor. We know sea level rise kind of fluctuates back and forth, but it's been trending up. It really rose about feet between 1900s, but we've seen about 6 inches the past 15 years, and that's very significant for how that's going to impact the beach. What storm events like we're seeing today, just a tide with a little onshore wind, now we have almost an 8-foot tide. And you can kind of see that if you're tracking tide predictions, we do that a lot. If you go back 15 years ago, the orange line shows the measured tide, the blue line shows the predicted tide. As you go closer to the present, that orange line is set above the blue line, meaning even on a calm day, if you look at the NOAA tide prediction, it may predict a 6-foot tide. You measure it, it's actually a 6.5-foot tide, without any wind, without any waves. That's the effect of the sea level rise that we're having. So here's a quick just flip through of the shoal as it's moving offshore. This is really what's driving our beach right now. The yellowish area that's kind of on the seaward side of the channel, the blue channel, kind of right in the middle of the graph there, that's the shoal that's presently attaching to the beach. I'm going to show you how that moves over the next 4 years. And you can see it shifting to the south and west, and now it's still shifting to the south and west, and then this last image here, it's really starting to shift towards the beach. And at this point, it was about 1,000 feet from the beach. But if you go out there today, it's only about 300 or 400 feet from the beach. So it's rapidly attaching to the beach. And I expect over the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see the shoal attaching. And it's going to be very dynamic in that area between basically the sea growth and the Ocean Club. We're going to see a lot of changes. As soon as this shoal attaches, it's going to spread a lot of sand north and south. Can't exactly predict how much of any individual location, but what we're working with the city on is getting a permit to be able to combat some of the erosion that we're seeing around the Beachwood East area right now. And that will be done by taking sand either from the shoal as it attaches or from the creeking areas further south on Isle Palms that have gained several hundred feet of beach since 2018, recycling some of that sand back to the north to provide some of that interim protection. So we're submitting a permit application for that within next week. A couple of aerial images, and I'm almost done here. This is the shoal of January. Again, a couple of hundred feet from the beach, off of the beach villas here and up to Mariners Walk. That area, you can see how calm it is behind the shoal. That's why sand accumulates behind it. As waves breach through gaps in the shoal, like indicated here, just off of Beechwood, that's what drives that focused erosion. The waves get through the gaps in the shoal, focus the erosion around those areas, and the sand spreads behind it. Unfortunately, we actually have a little shoal attaching off of the Grand Pavilion area, and that's pulled some of the beach out in that area, so it's doing pretty well right now. Last photo here, kind of showing that gap. And you can see all the breakers there. That's all sand that's merging on Isle Palms in the next couple of years. So we'll monitor that. We'll work with how it's actually attaching to the beach to try to come up with a restoration plan that can benefit the entire community. Skip through this pretty quick, but overall the beach has added about 1 million yards of sand since 2009 island-wide. So the efforts that the city and the development has been doing is helping the entire island, but it's going to be something that doesn't go away. And this is a long-term strategy to preserve the beach moving forward. So I wish I could say it's a one and done, but unfortunately that's not the case. This last year, though, we did see about twice as much erosion as we've seen any prior year. Over the next 12 to 18 months, we really expect to see a lot of changes with the shoal attachment. We're hoping to attach this as quickly as possible. Overall, we feel like it's in a little bit more favorable condition than some of the prior events, as far as we don't expect to see quite as focused erosion. But we'll just have to monitor really closely. So moving forward, you may have seen there's been a couple of articles in the paper on Isle Palms Beach lately. There's several different things going on. The Corps of Engineers is planning on doing a beneficial use project at the south end of the island, pumping sand off of the spoil islands that you drive over as you're coming over the connector. They'll place that from 10th Avenue down to 2nd Avenue. And the city is going to look at restoring some of the dunes along that to complement the core project. Again, I mentioned the shoal management permit that we're pursuing right now, and hopefully we'll be able to turn that around quickly. And either this fall or winter, we may be able to implement the project there. And I mentioned the work we're doing for the watershed management. So with that, that's all the slides I have. Thank you very much.
Stephen has another appointment he needs to leave for, so normally we wait for Q&A on him, but just specifically any questions for Stephen on his presentation or the beach before we let him go.
Stephen, I was gonna do this, so. I've lived on the beach for over 20 years. 16 beach leaves. I've replaced this the third time I've had to replace that in my house. I've never seen a shoal attached that's benefited us. And, you know, we need to do something more permanent than to keep our fingers crossed and hope that something's gonna change. I mean, I've listened to a similar presentation. Gonna attach, we're all gonna be fine, we all leave here and we feel fine. And I'm gonna tell you what history is that. In a year or 2 years, you're gonna be asking us to check. We all be at the beach. And all of a sudden, where those shoals have gone, northeastern's come, taken it away, or whatever the story. But if we could just get some permanent solution to help us so that those homes don't get bad, our homes don't get bad all the time. And I keep hearing environmental issues, so forth. Let me just give you another full take on the environment. I'm going to tell you with one house in the storm this summer, there's 3 sections of 6x8 stairs, 4 sets of railings that go with it, 2 6x8 platforms that sit on those stairs, 4 Adirondack chairs, 2 big stone planters, all plus 2 6x17 sections of siding. All the nails and screws and nuts and bolts are all out of that Atlantic Ocean. smooth summer is long. And we need, we talk about the environment, but we're not helping the environment. I'm all for the environment. But we need some permanent answers. And we've tried to talk to the state, we've talked to the city, and I will tell you, it's been more helpful this last time than ever before. But we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And there has to be better ways. If you look at what they're doing down in Florida, you look what they're doing up in North Carolina, they're protecting the homes and preserving the beaches. And I would say that Wild Dunes and all the islands need to come up with some better answers, because, yeah, we may replenish the beach again next year or the year after. And it used to be 7 years between it, then it's 5 years, now it's gonna be 3 years. And it's just not the answer, folks. And I don't wanna put cold water on this thing, but I don't want everybody to leave here thinking, hey, you know what, shoals are gonna attach, we're gonna be fine. It's just not gonna happen. And I would say for living it over 20 years, it just doesn't happen. Okay?
All right, I'll speak to that just a little bit. I don't want to suggest that this shoal process is the solution to the problems here. It's just part of what is causing the problems. Once the shoal does attach, it does provide opportunity to move sand around. So we have to work, as an engineer, with what the state allows us to do under the regulations. So some of the things that you're mentioning, are regulatory changes that have to go through the legislature. There will be a battle that, at some point is going to have to be fought and is being fought for, sea levels, for revetments and things like that along the coast. But there's a lot of competing interests that are very, very passionate about that. So again, what I mentioned is we're trying to come up with all the different tools to be able to handle the dynamic situation appropriately, for the scale that's going on.
Well, you're right, we can't get any cooperation from the state. The state legislature refused to look at us. The answer I got is the environmental issues in the rest of the state are more powerful than we are on the beach. And I was flat out told by our state representative a couple years ago, I can't help. Okay, we just can't get it done anyway. So I don't know what the ultimate answer is. Maybe it's interpreting existing rules and regulations. If we can't get them changed, maybe we can get new interpretations of it. Just help us put some permanent solutions in place rather than this temporary makeshift, because every meeting you're gonna have here is gonna be the same story. We're working on the beach, homes are getting damaged. It's just frustrating.
I do understand your frustrations. Yes.
So, brand new homeowner, Dunecrest Lane, just redid a house, and and we had significant beach erosion, stairs were washed away. I walk up the beach and I see walls, I see sandbags, and I see big boulders. Is any of that options on the table for protecting the erosion? I mean, we've lost a ton.
Right, so
Friends making new house.
Yeah, seawalls and revetments, those shore parallel hard structures are no longer allowed. They haven't been allowed in the state since 1988, anywhere within the state's jurisdictional area. So you can look at where the setback lines are and see where their jurisdiction falls. In addition, I believe the city and that ordinance is, the city has an ordinance that there are also no seawalls allowed within 250 feet of the high tide line. I know the south end of that has been temporarily suspended for a particular area down there. But the sandbags, the state allows for emergency work, including sandbags, beach scraping, and trucking in sand to occur anytime the high tide line's within 20 feet of property. So when that condition hits, then the owner or whoever wants to take responsibility can implement those measures. And that's what's been done around Beachwood. As you get a little further close to Dunecrest, that trigger isn't quite there. And we're monitoring that closely. So if it does get to that 20 foot, I don't want to speak for what the city will do, but that would allow them to be able to, allow somebody to be able to implement another.
So currently Dunecrest is not gonna have any help?
There's nothing we can do in the immediate term. Now, we are looking at doing the interim shoal management project that would possibly start next fall or winter. But that's a discussion that we have to have with the city and kind of measure the changes as that occurs. But again, if something does happen and that beach starts to erode and we do hit that trigger, then there's
Well,
something.
it did, I mean, it washed away our thing, and it looked like sand had been replaced, and it stopped right at our property.
Right, we were bound by what the state allowed us to do, and they determined that it didn't reach that 20-foot criteria. So we scraped sand where we were able to, but we had to stop where they told us to stop.
Steve, I have a rather direct question, but I think you're very detailed and educated and offer a prediction, but do you deal with the state, do you deal with the state legislature, or how, and are you part of the process that we can employ to change the regulations? Because again, I think there are more effective ways to do it. The second part to my question would be, is that at an earlier city council meeting, you suggested that there was, for property owners that have repeated erosional patterns, we can apply for a special permit that allows us to put down rocks or something like that. Is that a possibility?
To answer your first question, we are not lobbyists, but I do know several of the state legislatures that are involved in coastal counties and coastal issues, and I provide comments to them, and they periodically ask for our input on proposed regulation changes and things like that. So we are trying to offer as much, real world support as we can on what we're seeing on the coast, what management strategies work and what don't. So we're working as close as we can with them.
Can I just interrupt you? Say, when you say that, do you see that where you have any impact? Are they listening? Or what would you say our chances would be? Because I know that we have an effort to approach the state legislature to modify their regulations. What do you think the opportunity is to get them to allow the beachfront owners to do something of a more permanent nature?
Yeah, there are other groups like the South Carolina Beach Advocates. It's a good group that's basically a lot of coastal communities and owners and HOAs send representatives to it, and the state comes to it, the core, a lot of regulators. That's more of a policy branch that's kind of speaking to those things. I will say I'm not optimistic that if somebody were to propose, hey, let's build seawalls up and down the coast, that they would have enough political will to fight that particular battle. It's just too hot of a topic, and there are too many competing interests for that particular solution. There may be other things, in the emergency condition language that allows somewhat of a more permanent structure than like sandbags or something. But that's a difficult battle.
Well, we are in an emergency situation right now on Beechwood East.
Right.
Where I know y'all came out, we're certainly within 20 feet. In my case, that's underneath my house. But I think to Bill's point, that if we were allowed to bring in boulders, for example, they are removed. Is it just permanent structures, or can, if we had temporary structure, that won't fly either?
Not under the current regs. We'd have to get the regs changed for that. And I don't want to repeat kind of what I said earlier, but it would involve, meeting with your local representatives. We'd be happy to participate in those meetings and give some feedback and input to that. I don't think it's a terrible solution in certain conditions and cases, but the difficulty with any coastal policy is that you have to apply it to the entire state. So what works in one spot, when trying to code that, may not work well in another spot, and that makes it very difficult to get some of those things changed.
Well, again, during the council meeting, I think you hinted at that a smaller area that continues to have erosional problems, that you could apply for a smaller area for a temp, that again is repeated
I may have been referring to a groin, and groins are a permissible alternative, and that's something we could look into. Just the particular nature of the processes affecting your area with the shoals, groins might not be as effective as they are in some other areas. But there's no, I may have mentioned that that's a potential, it could be something that would be a benefit in the future, but it's nothing that is available right now. Again,
what is a groin? I don't even know.
shore perpendicular structure to help slow down sand erosion. And we'll leave it at that. But Jimmy, I'm happy to have deeper conversations with you. I won't take up too much time.
Okay, well, can we use your company as a resource to support an effort? Is that a possibility?
We'll be happy to have discussions over what options in more detail are there for those particular situations. I don't want to promise that we're going to support things that, again, we're trying to work with the state and a lot of other entities too on more comprehensive beach management. So, but yes, we'll be happy to talk with you and kind of give our experiences and completely understand the situation you're going through.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your support.
Stephen, yeah, I don't really have a question of Tom Schmidt from 50 Ocean Point Drive. We've been here since '97, which makes us relative newcomers, and our first house was at 52nd and the beach. And that beach, since we bought it, has decreased considerably. Our experience here has been what you described. We do see the shoals come and attach, and we see the beach come and go. We followed your company very much. I heard you speak at the town council meetings, and we hear the Army Corps of Engineers, and Dave Kanowski knows probably as much as any islander does about shoaling and so on and so forth, and I've listened to him. And I firmly believe that your plan of what you say is true and it's going to work. You just need to give a little time. I realize some of the people who talk, their goal is getting bored a little harder than mine is at the moment, so there's a sense of greater urgency. But I heard that you were talking at the town council meeting and the Army Corps of Engineers, and there's a plan in place, and I think we just have to give it time to work. And we thank you for all your efforts, and Dave and Terry and everybody else that's behind this thing. And so keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. And one last thing, if you're really interested in this, the Olive Palms has a beach ad hoc committee that you can watch the meetings on YouTube. Go IOP.net and you find them. They're very, very informative, and they get down with Stephen's part of it, as people from OCRN and the like. If you're interested, highly recommend that. At any rate, we'll continue on. Yeah.
Meetings that we find out what they are. Announcement
Yeah, they're on IOP.net, right? Every Friday at 9. And that's and you can follow them online and push them to go up, right? All right, next, thanks, Stephen. Let me introduce Rick Bradley to talk about the property at the beach house.
Good morning, everyone. It's hard to believe this is my third time up here talking about the beach house. The questions have ranged from what are you going to do to when are you going to start? And now your question is when are you going to finish, right? At least it's well underway this time. You may recall that we started this effort back in 2021. First gathering input and feedback from our property owners. We held several different forums and sent out an online survey where over 1,100 of you responded, giving us ideas of what we might do and not do with the beach house. That input has informed and guided the design work that LS3P has done on the project. The project did go out for bids last year to 2 commercial contractors. They came in high, and so we decided to go out to 3 high-end residential contractors for bids as well. We vetted and selected a contractor last summer. It took a little bit longer than we anticipated, but it was a matter of getting the right contractor at a price that we were comfortable with, and that was a top priority for us as a board. Arnett Construction was selected as our general contractor. Travis Arnett is president of the company. He founded that company in Charleston in 2008, so it is a local company. What I can say about Travis is that he's been with us every step of the way. As the president of the company, he regularly attends our progress meetings. He's very interested in making sure that this project is done right. One of the primary reasons we chose Arnett is they have both a residential business as well as a commercial business that allowed Travis to draw from both sides of his company to get bids from his subcontractors. And they brought numerous alternatives to the table to help us keep our costs down. But it's been a challenging environment the last couple of years. All of those of you out there who have either built or remodeled in the previous 2 years know what I'm talking about. The other reason Arnett is a great choice is they have worked on projects in the past with LS3P, so there was an existing relationship between the two companies that are doing the work on our behalf. So let me highlight a few changes. There's a picture of the existing one. And we're looking at this one from the parking lot side of the building. The two upper decks were retained. And if you recall, the deck on the east side of the building, which is on the left side of the slide, was originally to be a maintenance deck. We were going to locate the HVAC equipment up there, but with Arnett's help, the HVAC units will be relocated, and both decks are going to be available for our use. You may notice too, on the left side of that building, that we originally had some floor-to-ceiling windows on the front of the building. We decided that, that floor-to-ceiling window is overlooking the parking lot. That's not really the best view. So we downsized the windows. That saved us a little bit of money, and that keep the light coming in on that side. Besides, the better view is on the beach side anyway. Also, more to the right of the slide, remember we're putting in an elevator. The handicap parking will be located on the right side of the building near the entrance to the elevator, which is to the right of the stairs in that slide. All right. Now, looking at the building from the beach side, remember we're extending the deck off of the downstairs room, so it'll be accessible from that room. We scaled back the expansion of the lower deck on the left side of the slide once we realized that we had both upper decks available and accessible. You may also notice that the balcony of the second floor room has been removed. That was a tough decision. It was relatively small, and because it was to be cantilevered over the lower deck, it was going to require additional bracing, and as we were trying to control cost, we decided, hey, we got two upper decks already, we're good. But the room, the view from that room is still going to be absolutely amazing. We started last fall with site work with a civil engineering firm to improve drainage on the property. That has taken some time, and when you've got rains like we had this morning, it does slow things down. More recently, pilings for the expansion have been going in. The foundation work is underway. Once they get it pumped out again after today, and then framing will be able to begin. I'll note too that handicap accessible porta-john has been placed on the beach access pad. And as soon as we get electricity restored to the site, once all this site work is done, we'll bring in a larger restroom trailer for your use during the summer seasons. The beach access path and the picnic shelter do remain open, as is half of the parking lot. And I'll note that we're looking at improvements in the Wi-Fi and internet coverage for the building, including the picnic shelter, as well as some additional security and access controls, all of which you said were important to you. But back to that most important question, when will the building be ready and reopen? We've lost some time in the schedule with the rains and the storms last year and into this year. We got an update on the project schedule just this past Wednesday. So you're hearing it very shortly after we got an update. The building is scheduled to be completed in late October. Now, that's not as soon as any of us might like, but that's what I meant by a challenging environment out there. There's plenty of other work to do. Dave and Jacob and I meet on a regular basis with Arnett and LS3P to get an update on status and address any issues that may be coming up. The Community Association staff, along with the Beach House Committee, will be reviewing scheduling and reservation guidelines, and we'll be taking a fresh look at the rules and regulations for the use of the building as well. And while we made a number of decisions on things like lighting and appliances and tile and flooring, we're going to be exploring, we've got to explore options for the interior and exterior furnishings. That's got to happen in the next several months as well. But I promise the rocking chairs will be back. Remember too that the work is being funded by our reserve funds, the Roads and Drainage Fund for the site work, the Capital Improvements Fund will fully cover the building renovations. You saw on Debbie's slide that at the end of 2023, the Capital Improvement Fund had a balance of $4.3 million. So even after the renovations are complete, we will not deplete that fund. We'll continue to provide updates on our progress in the monthly newsletter and in those weekly email community announcement blasts. Finally, I'll say that I fully understand how much we all value that beach house and its views, and I'm confident you're going to be pleased once the work is done. And like you, I look forward to sitting in those rocking chairs on the beach, enjoying those views again. And I'll take any questions at the Q&A session that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, looks great. All right, moving right along, I'm going to introduce Tom Nolan, who's going to talk about the resort.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk about the resort and our partnership here. I started probably the day after last year's annual meeting, so it's been about a year. Maybe good timing, I don't know, but it's great to be here and give you a little update on what we're doing. I'm not sure if I'm controlling the slides or not, but a little bit, if I don't do a thank you, I can't do what I do without the people that service these rooms and these events and food and beverage and so forth. So maybe they're not in here today, but I have to say thank you to all of my colleagues here who tirelessly work each and every day to put on a great experience for those who are here enjoying the resort, whether resident resort guest member or what have you. So you can all now say when you walk in and see one of my colleagues that I did do my official duty of thanking them for what they do. Couple of bragging rights for us, because I believe it has a lot to do with not only the services that we provide, but also the environment that we do the operating in, which is this Wild Dunes community. And these are voted on by people that come to visit, like maybe you did years and years ago and found this to be a paradise that you wanted to be a part of long term. And the same is true of these awards that the hotel has recognized. And the nice thing about it is it covers so many different gamuts of pickleball and rackets and wellness to bookings to Southeast recognition to hotels that most like to be booked and resorts and so forth. So in a humble way, I thank all of you for helping us get those accolades because without a great environment, a resort is a resort at the end of the day. A couple of resort activities. I was so happy to see the triathlon on the slide when we first came in because it's been a mission of ours, at least for the last year, to create an environment here that is welcoming. We want to be true to our place. We want to focus on wellness and we want to focus on engagement. And so with that, triathlon is just a small piece of our partnership with the community, our partnership with our members, and getting kids, as you know, out and doing things other than working on their phones and doing some wellness activities. So the resort is piggybacking on all those types of initiatives that allow us to be outdoors. Our Memorial Day, our July 4th, many of you came to Frightmare by the Sea, which is our Halloween down the boardwalk, walking through the plaza and taking everybody down to the beach and having entertainment, to our fall ball, to the plaza strolls. We've hired a artist in residence at our gallery that has been with us for a year and a half now, who does great paintings and so forth. And then we also have, I hope you recognize the efforts we put in during the December timeframe from Thanksgiving through New Year's around the decorations and snow machines and Christmas carolers and so forth. We want that resort to be yours and to be totally engaged in using that plaza as it is yours. So very pleased about the 2023 initiatives. Regarding some of our outdoor activities, as I continue to talk to be true to our place and around engagement, is our golf and rackets and spa initiatives. Obviously, pictures don't do it justice, but we're very proud of where our tennis and rackets facility stands, what our golf is doing, even though I'll get to it in a second. We had to push back the renovation, unfortunately, but we're going to obviously switch the phases up to do a few different things in the interim while we wait for the harbor course renovation. But our spa is ranked #1 in the Southeast. We have some interesting technologies in the spa. Everybody just probably thinks it's go get inside, but now you have some infrared saunas and so forth, which sometimes scare the living bejesus out of me, but people use it and love it. So it's wonderful. And the biggest thing is getting juniors out. Our junior program in tennis now is exceeding 42 kids, which is phenomenal for this area, right? Because we have a great adult program. We've risen our USTA teams and Calta teams from 3 to over a dozen. So that tennis facility and pickleball area is really coming into its own. Food and beverage, post-COVID, finally, thank God, I hope nobody wants to talk about that again, but food and beverage suffered the most in that area. And now we're able to open up all of our 12 outlets on a seasonal or year-round basis, which is really helpful and providing, again, experiences that you all have either mentioned to us or provided feedback on what you'd like to see back and why you'd like to see it back. Whether it be Ronnie Johnson at Huey's on Thursday nights or the Grand Pavilion entertainment or what have you. So it's our goal again this year, and you'll start seeing it here this week and next week as we get into season, all of those food and beverage outlets coming back and open for the season and probably through October. We added the NFL package in some areas so you can sit outside and watch NFL games in a couple of locations. Just again, trying to create engagement, wellness, and so forth in the plaza. Sweet shop, I know I talked about wellness and activity, but if you do work out, you can come have an ice cream every once in a while. It's still pretty good for your soul. So, capital investments in a resort like ours, as you imagine, similar to Dave and his group there are some capital improvements that that are completely obvious, and there's some that are just, you just take for granted because we need to do them. We continue to invest in the resort, whether it be from technology, as you know, we had that Verizon antenna truck in the parking lot because the Osprey decided to, you know what they do, and then they have a baby, and so we had to leave the truck there environmentally until the Osprey delivered the fowl or whatever it is. So but we do have a permanent solution now to the cell service and the internet aspect. And then very proud of some of you have been out to Grand Pavilion already and put out all the new furniture for the pool and the restaurant area out there. Same with the swim center deck. So we continue to, kind of reinvest and try to keep current with what we're doing here at the resort. 2024, we think it's going to be a great year, but in my view and my team's view, optics are really important. As we discussed your new beach house and so forth, we find that optics are really important. So we've made great changes in our landscaping company and upgraded what I think is a company that's doing a fantastic job to keep the resort looking pristine in all the areas that we either commingle with the community association or we run on our own. So from that perspective, doing that, we changed a little bit of the entrance there with a new paver system to kind of align a little bit nicer look as you pull into the resort. Not to mention, the things that we've done with in the golf area and so forth. So we're really excited about 2024. Obviously, economic conditions are really interesting. It's an election year. Hospitality world is a cyclical business, so usually in an election year it gets pretty interesting on what companies do and how they make decisions and leisure travel and disposable income. But right or wrong, I think we know who the candidates are well ahead of time, so people have time to plan as they see fit on their travel. In our food and beverage outlet, last year we put down the taco and tequila at the Sweetgrass Pool. We found that to be exceptionally attractive for people to come in and just snack and hang around the pool a little bit easier. What I've also been proud of in the food and beverage area is we've gone almost exclusively to local vendors and local ingredients for all of our outlets. We try to change our menus 2 to 3 times a year. We've created local partnerships with Sweetgrass Vodka, with Firefly Bourbon, and Common House Ale, and you'll see this summer that you'll have that logoed Wild Dunes representation. But we find it very important, and the right thing to do is to spend our money locally. And that's what our efforts have been, especially in the food and beverage area, but also in our cleaning supplies, you name it, we want to keep it within South Carolina where possible. So that's really important for us. The other thing is if we start with those community events and bringing them back after COVID. Again, Ronnie's going to be there. We're going to add another night of entertainment. There will be another dinner night in Yui's on Fridays and Saturdays. There'll be breakfast to go down there for your golfers. We'll be putting in more nights. We brought back trivia about 6 weeks ago. We've been sold out every trivia night. So I think by listening, it helps to make good decisions. So that feedback only comes from you all, and when we implement that and you see results, why not continue to invest in doing that? So really happy about what's going on in the food and beverage area. 2024 objectives. I'm a big philanthropy person, and I think our staff is too, and we want to continue to take advantage of what's available to us locally. So, we obviously have the largest fundraiser in May, the PCF Prostate Cancer Foundation Golf Tournament that takes place at our courses, obviously, and as part of that contribution, we donate both courses for that event. And it's I think the single biggest prostate cancer fundraiser in the world today. So you should be really proud of that. It's always the Saturday before Mother's Day. So I know everybody will be home, so even if you don't play golf, you can still come down and make a contribution to that great event. We have, well, obviously support the Lens environment, not only through the triathlon, but their annual banquet, which comes up in May, and this year's at the Citadel Beach House. And we have the Martin Luther King celebration in January, which was a really special thing to be involved with in the community. Our pain point in the community obviously has been the gravel lot for quite some time. I think that's no surprise. The intent here is to return that to, again, being true to our place, recreation, wellness focus, is back into a recreation kind of space. Tennis, as you know, pickleball has been the explosion sport of the last 2 or 3 years, so we'll expand the footprint. But our also goal is to put in and extend kind of a green space area as part of that transformation of the gravel lot. So if you want to go and throw a Frisbee, and it'll be open to the community, the resort guests, resort groups, philanthropic events. So our intent is to kind of just open that up a little bit and let's get out and do some things in the outdoors, but you know, keep our focus where tennis and racquetball has been such a critical part of the community for so long. Our golf plan, I think, you know, Jeff Minton is here and his group does a fabulous job with the golf. We're pushing the harbor course renovation to March of 2025, but in the interim, we'll be spending some time in renovating the driving range and putting in the new mat system and so forth. Fixing all the bridges on the golf course. We did 5 in 2023. We have 7 more to fix in 2024. So we have a pretty robust pivot, you know, from where we want it to be in 2024 to where we want to go in 2025. But hopefully, knock on wood, and everything goes according to plan. As you know, we saw the beach presentation. It affects obviously golf as well, as you all know. That 18th hole is a very interesting beachside front today. So with that, I try to speed things up a little bit, and I'd like to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Terry Pack.
I promise I will be very quick. First of all, good morning and welcome. My name is Terry Happ, and I'm honored to be a member of the Wild Dunes Community Board of Directors. I'm a 22-year executive. Yes, I'm a little bit older than many. 22-year executive for Lowe, and I represent the partnership who owns Wild Dunes, Dart and Lowe. A bit of trivia. I owned a home in Wild Dunes for nearly 8 years in the 2000s, and I was executive vice president and managing director of the resort. Being a former resident, a former resort operator, gives me a unique perspective to serve the full-time residents, the second homeowners, and the visitors. As you have heard from other presenters this morning, it has been quite an active year. My colleague Tom has given you an update. Tom, thank you for your leadership throughout this first very active year you've been here. It has been my pleasure to serve on the board this past year. This voluntary board is made up of dedicated members of this community who have the best interest of the Wild Dunes community as their top priority. While I'm reluctant to be redundant in my remarks, I would like to add some highlights. First and foremost, Dave, my congratulations to you. I cannot even believe that you are going to retire. Makes me sad. I met Dave in, I think, 01 or 02, and I've watched you lead with such great, extraordinary leadership, and we will miss you so much. So thank you. To all of the WDCA staff members, you're remarkable. You work so hard to help us stay connected, and we really appreciate your efforts. And Carolyn, I see you in the front row. Thank you. And Jacob is somewhere, he helped me earlier. The owners of Wild Dunes Resort remain disappointed in the actions of the Isle of Palms City Council, sorry, Mayor, in the late 2022 when 5 land ordinances were arbitrarily passed without any discussion with the resort. This action prompted Wild Dunes LLC to file a lawsuit against the city. Sadly, the only people getting rich were the attorneys. Sorry. After many, many interim discussions, the lawsuit was withdrawn without prejudice, which means should we see the need, we could bring it back. But it was really important for us to look at how we spend our money and put it back into this wonderful community. Wild Dunes Resort LLC remains committed to this beautiful community, and our actions demonstrate this. Wild Dunes Resort is committed to the areas outlined in the WDCA strategic plan, and I remain an engaged community member. Wild Dunes Resort has voluntarily agreed to continue the contribution to the Beach Renourishment Fund. In fact, satisfying our $6 million commitment, I went back to the ownership and asked them to up the amount to the $10 million amount. And I'm very committed to that. And Dave, thank you for working with me, and Jim, working with me on that initiative. As Tom notes, a significant effort to enhance the harbor course in 2024 has been a bit delayed, but we will continue with the bridge work and then irrigation tees, greens, cart paths in 29. And we will continue to upgrade the driving range in 24. I know where's Mike, that's one of your pet peeves, and I know you're really happy we're going to do that. And yes, we will continue to work on the redesign of 18 and what does that look like in the future. Also, as Tom notes, the dreaded gravel lot. It was not one of our most brilliant decisions. It wasn't on my watch, just saying, but it was made. Will be returned to recreation in the form of tennis courts, pickleball, and a green space. Timing of the above enhancements, of course, we have to look at all of our permitting and regulatory agencies, but it is our intent to move as quickly as possible. Off-site parking for resort employees was secured last year with the Citadel, and it will begin as soon as work begins on the gravel lot. Work continues with the City of Isle of Palms and the Wild Dunes residents to formulate a noise ordinance that benefits both neighbors and the resort operations. We are hopeful that this new ordinance can be in place by the summer season. Wild Dunes Resort is working diligently with the WDCA to limit access to the back resort gate, and will continue to keep this as a focus. As Jim Anderson states, and if I may just say, Jim, you've been a remarkable leader this year. Thank you for your leadership. Wild Dunes LLC is paying assessments according to the governing documents, and we did voluntarily cap our voting rights. As you know, Wild Dunes community is a wonderful place to live, to work, and to play. We are committed to the collaborative effort with the board and the community members, and to contributing any way possible to the continued success of this extraordinary community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom and Terry. Well, we're in the home stretch here, and I'd like to bring up Linda to talk here to talk about the election.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, please join me in congratulating Rick Bradley and Paige Huff in their election. I'm confident that they're going to do a great job for you guys.
Yes, well, Thank you, congratulations, Paige, Rick, look forward to working with you all, continue to work with you. And now this is one of the sad things, because we're gonna recognize our outgoing director, Linda Tucker. And I think unanimously on this board, and everybody who knows her, knows that she is one of the most considerate, thoughtful, and effective people I've ever come across. So we are really gonna miss her, and as I think Debbie said, you're not getting away, Linda, we're gonna keep talking to you. So anyway, gratitude, much appreciated.
I just want to say, I really wanted to run for another term, but I wanted the present more. I've watched I've been here almost 50 years, and I've watched this, and I see everybody get presents, and it's like, I want mine, so.
Okay, now it's Q&A time, and normally we get email Q&As, and I throw out a couple of those, but we didn't get any. So I'm going to open up to the floor. I would ask that whoever has a question, come up to the mic, say your name, where you live, and then ask the question, and one of us will do our best to answer it if we can. Whoever's interested, come on up. Okay.
Are we voting for a motion? I mean, this is attached to.
No, we didn't need to. We didn't need to. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Jim.
Hey,
Thank you. My name is Ted Kinghorn. I administer the LENS program, that stands for Law Enforcement Neighborhood Support, and we do just that. We support the law enforcement on the island, and we support our neighbors. I'd like to think that I have been the biggest advocate of wild dunes, back to my first visit almost 40 years ago. And I was reminded in the last couple of years since we kicked off the LENS program of how generous and thoughtful your community is. The Homeowners Association, amazing to work with, the confidence that they gave us that we could administer the recent youth triathlon. Wild Dunes, Tom and his team, not only did they set policy, but they were there volunteering with us. LENS is a volunteer organization. We had a 1-to-2 ratio of our volunteers to the children that were out there running. And I was reminded recently of their little bibs that you get when you do an event like this. And prominently on there were two logos, your association and Wild Dunes Resort. And I would be remiss if I didn't come here this morning. In spite of your additional security, which I was able to get in, Larry, so you need to tighten that up a little bit. I thank you all very much. We want to thank the individual guests to the resort as well as the homeowners. And we look forward to working with you many, many more times. And if I look familiar to some of you, it's because I'm often referred to as the mayor's body double. So that's, and when you see me out and about, feel free to ask me anything, and we'll try to provide a constituent service to you. So, folks, thank you so much. It's been enjoyable working with you. We look forward to doing that in the future. And if anyone's interested in the LENS program, go to lensiop.org, a volunteer, not-for-profit group, and we welcome everyone. And we're excited about what the future holds. Thank you, Jim, very much.
Yeah, that was quite an event. We enjoyed it immensely. Anybody have questions? Have any questions?
How do you for Dave? Tony Santiago, 60 Ocean Point. First off, Linda, thank you. Appreciate everything you've done. She's got tremendous character and integrity. To the new board members, good luck, Paige and Rick, again. Wish you only the best. My question's going to revolve around, and I won't touch on the assessment issue, because you already knew it. Assessment issue will be dealt with later. I'll put some newsletters out on that. Nominating committee for selection of board members. I think it's important to understand, probably 5 years ago, I started talking about this process. It ends up becoming more of a selection process, taking nothing away from the people that were voted in. I think they'll do a tremendous job. However, it is pretty archaic compared to what's going on around the country. This process of the nominating selection committee program is actually illegal in California for both condos and homeowners associations. It's also illegal in Florida for condo associations. The leading real estate attorney on it, who has over 600 homeowner associations and condo associations, Dan Sensinger, has stated, this is passe. It basically supports the status quo, and that's why it's been ruled illegal. Even in Florida, where HOAs are not illegal, it's under, I believe, 6% that actually use it, even though it's legal. I just think we need to open it up. I ran a quick survey to the WDCA members, 2 days. We got 530 people voting. Do you want an more open process, or do you want to maintain what we have? Over 80% of that 530 went for more open. I'm hoping the board will continue to listen to us, because I think they have gotten better. Last year, I was impressed with the sub-HOA committee meetings and the survey that was put out. So I'm hoping we will continue that process and listen to the members and think about improving this one step further. Rick and I think Jim did a pretty good job of improving it from that standpoint. Recruiting, we all promoted a number of people. We did get 7 highly qualified candidates. I would have liked to vote on 7 highly qualified candidates. That's all I would think is much fair. So I hope that the board will consider that going forward, and want to hear back later from you guys on that issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Get the big discussion about it. Next.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Gleckow, and I'm a property owner of a beachfront property, Shipwatch. I'm also the board HOA, and I just wanted to come up here and thank you. Jim, you mentioned the meeting you held with HOA presidents, and as someone who represents 104 units, it was great to be able to meet with the community association and collaborate and be heard and hear what's going on and bring that back to Shipwatch. So I just wanted to say thank you. I also wanted to, I'm a Rackets member as well. So I wanted to recognize the work that Tom Nolan and Terry Hack and the resort is doing to improve the landscape of the tennis center. If you're not a tennis member, you may not know this, but Tom kind of brushed over this a little bit. The courts have been improved immensely. We have world-class pros. They've created a state-of-the-art facility that I'm proud to be a member of, but that is also, whether you're a member or not, is attracting new families who are willing to pay a premium to have a house here. So it's raising our property value, and I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you very much. Always love to hear positive feedback. Any other questions? Sir?
My name is Ted McKnight, Shadrow. I've been here before, been to your public safety meetings and to your board meetings and here. And I keep raising the same issue. I have to raise the same issue because it never gets addressed. And my remarks are not only to this board, but also to my friends on city council. And that deals with regards to the lack of a 4-foot setback on Palm Boulevard from 53rd Street up to 57th Street. This started back, Linda was still working for the city, so that is how far back I've been addressing this issue. We were able to get a couple small changes. One was we did get the 4-foot setback from 40th Street up to 53rd Street, but for whatever reason, it wasn't continued up further past that point, even though those of us who live in that area have to cross Palm Boulevard to get to the beach are automatically affected by it. One of the things that we did get was we got a 15-foot wide sight line coming off the beach access paths out of Wild Dunes. That was one of Linda's suggestions. Unfortunately, those sight lines aren't enforced. And I periodically take pictures of that. One yesterday, one back in December the 11th. And there are vehicles parked right in the middle of that setback or that supposedly sightline. And if you're not going to enforce it, then the rule doesn't apply. Obviously, the people who keep parking there realize there is no enforcement. When you talk about working with the city, those are some of the things you ought to be saying to them. You need to enforce it. I don't understand why the police aren't issuing parking tickets. This is the off-season. They aren't required to be doing other things. They're driving around. And if they just simply stop, throw on their flashing lights, write a couple parking tickets, I think that at least that would solve that particular problem. In addition to which, that whole section of roadway, we have continuous parking going on there. Again, it's not beachgoers that are parking there. They gotta be employees from somewhere. And I've got to believe that they are in fact hotel employees. And at the very least, if they're gonna park there, somebody needs to be saying to them, even though it's not required, you ought to park at least 4 feet off the pavement. Again, I can show you the pictures. And they're right there, 2 inches off the pavement. I'm not exaggerating when I say 2 inches. PennDOT, the South Carolina Department of Transportation, has, of course, doubled down on being stupid. A couple of years ago, when the Secretary of Transportation came, they got out for one day, they threw a little dirt and stones certain places, a couple of shovels full, but they did enough to indicate this is where people ought to park, which is right beside the pavement. So they've encouraged people to park right beside the pavement, even though there's space. I've got pictures I can show you from yesterday. Gray, windy, cold day, so these aren't beachgoers. That there's plenty of space to park 4 feet off the pavement. But again, PennDOT has encouraged them to park right beside the pavement. There's also then the South Carolina Department of Transportation put in a walkway coming off the beach access path, which is between 54th and 55th Street. And the beach access path coming off the ocean side goes straight into a private property owner's driveway. With those vehicles parked there on Palm Boulevard, you can't walk along on the land side of Palm Boulevard. The sidewalk's on the ocean side. So the Department of Transportation should have put that walkway coming off the land side of the beach access path. I keep asking, can you please do something about it? Can you put some pressure on some people? And nothing ever happens. So when you talk about livability and the beaches being important, yes, they are. For those of us who live in one of the older sections of Wild Dunes, we have to take our lives in our hands. And I can show you photographs I took as recently as yesterday, showing that you absolutely have about 10 feet of space before a car hits you. There's no traffic enforcement up there, so they're going faster than the speed limit as they come down that section of road because it's a nice straight flyaway. And you take your life in your hands when you try to cross that section. So I'd ask you, the City Council, to address that and actually get something done, the very least of which is start enforcing the 15-foot wide site line.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think the only response I have to that is we have something to work with. It's, I think, collaboration with the city and the resort and community association. Let's look into it and see what we can or should be done. Yeah,
I've asked you annually, so I'd like to actually do something. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. All right, anybody else have anything? All right, well, not too bad. It's time for me to make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.